It was a quiet night on the Florida highways, the kind of night where anyone could vanish without a trace. A lone figure slowed her car at the roadside. Inside, a man had no idea this would be his last ride. This woman would terrify a nation, her name, Aileen Wuornos. But before the murders, before the headlines, there was a childhood marred by neglect, abuse, and secrets the world never saw. Aileen Carol Wuornos was born in 1956 in Rochester, Michigan. Her father abandoned the family before she could remember him, and her mother, struggling with alcoholism, left Aileen to fend for herself. By her early teens, she was living with strangers, exposed to abuse, neglect, and hardship that no child should endure. Psychologists later noted that early abandonment and trauma can distort trust and perception, laying a foundation for high-risk behaviors. By age 13, she had already learned a harsh truth: in her world, survival meant learning to fight back, or disappear. Some say she even claimed her first kill at that age. Though unverified, the claim hints at the beginnings of a dark, survival-driven path that would later horrify the nation. In the late 1970s, Aileen drifted south to Florida, a state of endless highways and transient lives. She lived in trailers, worked odd jobs, and relied on sex work to survive. For Aileen, the open road was both freedom and danger. Every car she stopped could be an opportunity or a threat. Police reports later confirmed that all her victims were men, picked up along Florida highways. She met women, formed fleeting relationships, but none brought stability. Tyria Moore, a woman who would later testify, described Aileen as intelligent yet unpredictable, charming one moment, menacing the next. Underneath, she was terrified of being victimized, a fear that would fuel her deadly decisions. Between 1989 and 1990, Aileen Wuornos killed 7 men. She later said all were attempts at self-defense, men who tried to assault her. But the law and media painted a darker picture, a female serial killer operating in a world dominated by men. Victims included Richard Mallory, Charles Carskaddon, and David Spears. All were shot at close range and left along isolated roads. The first known victim, Richard Mallory, was picked up on a lonely highway. Moments later, he was dead. One by one, similar incidents followed. Headlines screamed, "Damsel of Death," while investigators struggled to piece together the pattern. Aileen's story confounds psychologists. She was intelligent, articulate, and yet impulsive and volatile. Trauma had warped her perception of danger and trust. To her, killing was sometimes survival, sometimes vengeance. Experts studying her case cite early childhood abuse, sexual trauma, and neglect as major factors contributing to her violent behavior. She told Tyria Moore that every encounter with a man could be deadly. "I don't trust anyone," she said. And in her mind, she was justified, hunting predators before they could strike first. But her actions would soon attract attention she couldn't escape. When news of the killings broke, Aileen became a media sensation. Reporters labeled her a female monster, a novelty in a world of male serial killers. But beneath the sensationalism lay a woman shaped by trauma, a survivor whose fear and rage had erupted in deadly ways. Newspapers and television footage emphasized gender, appearance, and notoriety, often ignoring psychological context. The public watched, fascinated and horrified. Meanwhile, investigators pieced together her movements, closing in on a woman who had lived on the edge of society for years. Every highway stop, every pickup, brought her closer to inevitable capture. By late 1990, patterns emerged. Victims were all men, mostly middle-aged, shot at close range. Witnesses described a woman in a light-colored car near crime scenes. Police intensified their search, determined to find the person behind the Florida highway murders. Maps, timelines, and witness accounts formed a clear profile of the suspect, Aileen Wuornos. Unknown to her, every highway she drove, every road she traveled, brought law enforcement closer. And as the winter of 1991 approached, the net was tightening, a moment that would change the course of her life forever. In January 1991, Aileen Wuornos' deadly game would finally end. But what unfolded next, the arrest, the trial, and her time on death row, would shock a nation and force us to ask, was she a monster, a victim, or something in between? The answers lie in the courtroom, behind prison bars, and in the dark corridors of her mind. January 1991. The highways of Florida, once the stage for a woman who struck fear into men she picked up, were now the corridors leading to her capture. Aileen Wuornos, a name that would haunt the nation, had lived in the shadows for years, and now, the law had finally caught up with her. But what followed in the courtroom, in prison, and in the media would shock the world even more. Aileen was arrested after a meticulous investigation. Witnesses had described a woman driving a beige or maroon car near the crime scenes, and forensic evidence linked her to multiple murders. When questioned, she confessed to killing 7 men, claiming each act had been in self-defense. Law enforcement faced a chilling reality: the woman they were pursuing had already taken lives with precision, yet in her own mind, she was simply surviving. The arrest ignited a media storm. Television crews camped outside her trailer, newspapers splashed her face across front pages, and headlines alternated between horror and fascination: Florida's deadly highway killer, damsel of death, female monster. To the public, she was a spectacle. To experts, she was a study in contradictions, a woman molded by trauma, simultaneously predator and victim. Some journalists sought to understand the nuances, reporting on her harrowing childhood, the abuse she endured, and the psychological scars that might have led to her actions. When the trial began in 1992, the courtroom became a stage for a drama the nation couldn't turn away from. Prosecutors painted Aileen as a calculating killer, meticulously planning each murder. Defense attorneys argued that her violent upbringing and years of abuse shaped her actions, pushing her to the edge of survival. Witnesses and friends testified, revealing a woman both dangerous and deeply broken. Her demeanor shifted between calm, reflective moments and volatile, emotional outbursts. The courtroom watched, captivated, unsure whether they were seeing a monster or a mirror of society's failures. Psychologists called her case a paradox. She was intelligent yet impulsive, articulate yet emotionally unstable. Trauma experts highlighted that abuse, neglect, and early exposure to crime warped her ability to navigate fear and trust. In her mind, killing was sometimes protection, sometimes vengeance. She believed she was delivering justice to men who preyed on women like her, yet her actions created a spiral of violence no one could contain. Every detail of her trial underscored the complexity of her life, a woman whose past had collided violently with the present, leaving devastation in its wake. The jury had hours of testimony to process, stories that painted her alternately as victim and executioner. In 1992, the verdict was delivered: 6 counts of first-degree murder, and a sentence of death by lethal injection. The courtroom erupted, and the nation braced itself. Aileen Wuornos, the woman who had haunted Florida highways, was now bound by the legal system she could not escape. Yet the public and media were divided: was justice served, or was a profoundly damaged life punished for crimes born of survival? On death row, Aileen's life continued to captivate. She gave interviews, candidly discussing her past, her crimes, and her perspective on men, society, and morality. Some saw her as unapologetic, others as a tragic figure ensnared by circumstances. Prison guards and inmates alike spoke of her as enigmatic and unpredictable, a living reminder of trauma's lethal potential. Every statement she made, every glimpse into her mind, deepened the nation's fascination and horror. On October 9, 2002, at age 46, Aileen Wuornos was executed by lethal injection. The world watched, some with relief, some with unease. Her story did not end in the execution chamber, however. Films, books, documentaries, and endless debates explored the life of a woman who defied expectations, committed crimes few could fathom, and left society questioning the line between victim and villain. Her legacy is complex. Aileen Wuornos is remembered not merely as a serial killer, but as a figure embodying the collision of trauma, survival instinct, and societal neglect. Psychologists and criminologists continue to study her case, seeking understanding in the seemingly inexplicable. Filmmakers and writers dramatize her life, yet the fascination endures because her story forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about humanity. What drives someone to kill? How much of who we become is shaped by the violence inflicted upon us? And is justice the same for everyone, or is it a mirror reflecting society's biases and failures? The highways of Florida may be quiet now, but the shadow of Aileen Wuornos lingers. Her story warns of the consequences of childhood trauma, societal neglect, and the thin line between survival and destruction. She was a victim, predator, and a warning, all at once. And though her life ended behind prison walls, the questions she leaves behind remain unanswered, echoing across the nation's collective conscience. If you found this story compelling, subscribe for more true crime narratives where we explore the lives, crimes, and mysteries that reveal the darkest corners of human nature.